In this episode, we are going to create our own package using React, and in the end of the video, we will be publishing the package to NPM. The package in mind that we'll be creating is this React autoplay package. What this package allows us to do is create video thumbnails that will automatically play when you hover on them. For example, if I were to hover on the first one,
Don't come any closer.
I'm not crazy.
so it's just a little preview of the contents. If we were to click on this video, if we hover on this one as well, it just plays, yeah, so it just plays in the background similar to this one. So it's very similar to like the video thumbnail that you have on YouTube. When you hover on them, it gives you a little preview section. To create this package, we are using something called Create React Library, which allows us to create libraries really easily. It doesn't have the option for continuous integration and deployment, but that's something that you can add yourself. If we are to view the package I had created, we can just search for it. So it's called React Autoplay. And it will take us right here. So to install it, all you need to run is npm install -save React Autoplay, and then import the video thumbnail from React Autoplay. And then the component itself is called video thumbnail, and you've got all these props that you could pass. The title prop is the title of your video. So if we hover on this one, it's called The Bachelor, premieres January 6th. And then the preview is the URL to your video. And then badge is premiere. So as you can see, all the badges have like live or premiere or live, and you can put anything you want in there. In this case, our badge text is going to be premiere. The badge BG, which is the badge background, and the message is the message underneath the title. Then you got muted if you are wanting to set the video to not have any audio, and then the width of the video, and you can also add a custom class name so that you can edit the style of the thumbnail. That's all for this video thumbnail. It's a very simple project, but it helps us get something out there so that other people can start utilizing. If you're looking to go ahead and start this project, let's jump into our terminal so we can get things going. First thing we need to do is run npx create-react-library. And for the directory, you do want to name it to the corresponding package because it's just a lot easier for you. So in my case, I will name it React Autoplay. But since I've already created a React Autoplay, I'll just do React Autoplay YT for YouTube. Go ahead and select enter and get that installed. You'll then be prompted with a few messages that you need to respond to. So the package name, we'll go ahead and leave it as React Autoplay YT. The package description, we could say video plays on hover. I'm not being very specific here. The GitHub handle, you'll put your GitHub. Mine is Akram. GitHub repo path. This will create a path for you, so you can leave it like so. And then the license, you can just hit enter for MIT. Next, you have the option to use a package manager, NPM or Yarn. I'll go ahead and select Yarn. Then you have the option to select just default JavaScript or TypeScript. It's really an option to you. It depends on what you're building. In our case, since it's very tiny and we don't necessarily need type checking all that much, we could just use default. Then it's going to go ahead and continue its installation. Now that might take a little while, but once that's complete, you can move on to the next task that it tells you to do. So the first thing it tells you to do is to cd into your project or your directory and run yarn start. Now you want to open another tab in your terminal and you want to cd into your example folder and run yarn start in there. So what this means is the first one you're going to cd into is your package, where you're going to be creating the video thumbnail or whatever package you're creating. The example is going to allow us to test our package, make sure it's working, and make sure that we can actually use it. So the example is just a very basic Create React app, while this one is also a Create React app, but it has customization to allow us to create our package. So let's get started. What we're going to do is we're going to cd into our project. So cd into React Autoplay YT. And I want to open this up in VS Code, so run code dot. This will open up our project in VS Code, but first let's go back to our terminal and let's run yarn start. And that's going to run yarn start in our React Autoplay YT. This is going to check for changes that we're doing on our package. Jumping back into the code, let's open up the terminal that we have in VS Code and cd into example. And inside example, go ahead and run yarn start again, and this will run our Create React app, which allows us to test. Once that's ran, it's going to open up a localhost 3000, and this will open up our project. That's the entire setup. It's extremely simple and very easy to use. Now, you're probably thinking, what the hell is this? And let's explain. Let's break down the project first. Let's get rid of this terminal, close the welcome, and let's open up the source index.js. First, let me check the font size because I know a lot of people like a larger font size, and I have it at 20. Let's go ahead and do 21 for this video. Close the settings. There we go. Now, this is the index.js in our package. If we open up the examples folder and search for the app.js, here's where we're using the create React app that's just importing our component. So it's importing example component, passing in a text prop called modern React component module. And you can see from up here, we're importing it from React autoplay YT. Now the magic behind this is inside our package.json, we are using a link, and I think NPM has something else, but Yarn uses a link. And this allows us to link in or import our package from the source folder. Let's close the package.json and let's compare the two. I've already talked about app.js. Let's go to index.js real quick. So the index.js is exporting a class component called example component, and this example component is what we're rendering here. Back in our other folder, we can see that it is using prop types to check that we are making sure we're passing a string in our text prop. We're then rendering this JSX, which is just example component and then the text prop of whatever it is. So if we were to go back to our app.js and change this to hello YouTube, it will, wow, hello YouTube, nope, hello YouTube, and save it, it will say hello YouTube in our example component. This is really awesome because everything is already set up and it's really easy to get going. Now with the setup complete, let's go ahead and start creating our package. One thing I also wanted to mention is the CSS. So we're using just basic CSS here. However, you could just write your CSS in JavaScript and that will work as well. For us, we're just going to stick with the CSS since it's not a lot of code. What I want to do first is go ahead and turn this class component into a functional component. And we're just going to make it a function component. Go ahead and add those arrows in. And then we're going to return the JSX in here. For now, let's just create a div, and inside of that, we can create another div. And inside this div, we're gonna have a video, and we're not gonna put in the source just yet. We can have this video be self-closing. And underneath this video, we are going to add the badge. So what the badge was, it represented if it was live or if it was a premiere or whatever. So we can create a div in here, and we can just say badge. Now outside of the nested div, we are going to have an h4, and this h4 is going to have a title. And underneath this h4, we have a span tag, which represents the message. Now we also need to export this video thumbnail. So let's do export default. And we are just going to write video thumbnail. Let's save this. And it's going to say we have errors. And this is because of our ESLint. So if we just hover on them, it'll just tell us what the issue is. And this is just allowing us to write better code. So it says new line required at the end of file, but not found. We could just add a new line underneath. And then these errors over here are regarding space, so we could get rid of that. And then the prop types has an error as well, and this is just because they're not being used right now. We can get rid of this component import because we're using a functional component. And we have an error here. And the error is it's expecting single quotes and not double quotes. So with the ESLint, we need to write single quotes. So let's do that. For now, we could just save this. And jumping into our app.js, which is in our example, we don't have an example component that we could bring in. We have video thumbnail. So let's do that. We could do video thumbnail, and we could bring in a video thumbnail in here. We don't have any props, so let's get rid of this text prop and let's save it. What should happen is we should just return sort of badge. Oh, I spelled badge incorrectly. It's B-A-D-G-E. Save that. What should happen is it should just return this entire div, but we don't have a video source. So it's just going to return badge title and message on the screen. If we preview what we have, we can see that badge title and message are being displayed, and that's awesome. So we've kind of got the basis set up on the component we want imported from our package. This is great, and from here we can kind of continue on building our actual package. What we could do from here is make the video thumbnail more dynamic so that we could pass in props from our app.js. And to do that, what we're going to do is first we need to know what props we want to pass in. And what I'm going to do to figure out which props I need is first let's use prop types. So I'm going to do video thumbnails dot prop types, and this is just checking for the props and what their types are. We can pass in an object. So I know that we need a preview prop, and what the preview prop is going to have is just a string, and that string is the URL, which is either a path to the video or a URL to the video itself. In this example, we're just going to rely on Giphy to bring in an MP4 video. So the preview that we're going to have is going to have prop types.string, and this is going to make sure or ensure our users that, hey, you need a string for the preview prop to work. Next, we have a title, and this title is pretty much just the title of our video or our thumbnail. It's also going to have a string. We also need a message, which tells us what is the message. It's either by somebody or the amount of views that the video has or the amount of people that are watching. This is also going to have a prop types of string. Next is our badge, and the badge is also going to have a prop types of string. It's going to be lowercase. And so there's a lot of strings here, but this is just to make sure that we can inform the user that they need to pass in a string. We also have the badge BG, which allows us to change the color of our badge, and you can kind of set it to whatever you want. In our example, we had the live, I don't want to play that. We had the live sort of have this purple background, Premiere have this pink background, and over here we have live as well. Okay, let's go back in our project. Next, we have the muted option, and what the muted option allows us to do is select a Boolean on if we want the video to be muted or not. So it's just a true or a false on if it's going to be muted or if it's going to have audio. And to do that, we're just going to check for the prop types of bool, which is a Boolean for true or false. Next, we have the width prop type, and the width prop type is going to be a number. What the width prop type allows us to do is allows us to change the width of the video thumbnail. Next, we have class name, and class name allows us to pass in a string containing the class name that the person that's using our package wants it to be. So they could pass in a class name, and our main video thumbnail, our entire div will have a class name, and they could just access the video or the H4 or the message and just change the looks of it. That's it for our props. So let's go ahead and save it. And again, prop types just allows us to make sure that if the user is going to pass in a string or a Boolean or a number or an object, we can also pass in objects. In this case, I didn't do that just because we want to make it easier for users just to pass in quick props for our video thumbnail. But you always have the option to pass in an object as well, which may contain different properties for the different outputs you want to display for the user. Now, if we hover on our prop types.string or any of the other ones, we can see that the title is not defined, but prop is never used. So title is never defined here, and we need to define it. So first, let's just start off with the title. What we could do is use a tree shaking method to bring in the title. And in our app.js, we can pass in a title that will say hello. And if we save app.js and jump back into index.js, we need to remove this title and just switch it to render our title prop like so. So the H4 is going to say hello. And if we preview our project, not this one, this one right here, we could see that hello is being displayed, which is awesome. Let me see if I could zoom in a bit more. Like that. I think that's good. So it's going to say hello. And if we change app.js to say hello YouTube and save it, it's going to reflect immediately. So that's awesome. Let's go back in our project and inside index.js and finish bringing in each prop and assigning it to whatever div or element we want it to assign to. Now the next prop we could work on is the preview prop, and the preview prop is going to have a string which is going to have the URL for our preview or our video. Where we're going to get this preview from is Giphy. So if we hop into our browser and just go to Giphy and search for a video file, we can just copy this URL, and back in our app.js we can type in preview, and we're going to assign it this URL. Let's save that and go into our index.js, and inside of our index.js we've already set the source to be video. What we could also pass in our video is an attribute called loop, which will loop our video, and we'll also set a width, and this width is just going to be 350 for now. And again, this error is telling us that we're using double quotes, and just the ESLint's really annoying sometimes, but it's just helping us write better code. Let's save this and preview our project in React Autoplay. We can see that it's passing in the hello YouTube, and it's passing in the video file. It's not playing right now because we haven't told it to play, and to see if it actually works, we can just pass in autoplay as the attribute, and this will automatically play our project. Let me mute that. So we don't want it to autoplay. We want it to play when we hover on it. And we'll get to that in just a sec. Let's just finish our UI for our components. Let's get rid of this autoplay since we don't want that to happen. And for our width, we can pass in the width prop that we already have. So just go ahead and set width to width. And in our preview, we're going to write width here. And in our app.js, let's organize this a bit. Oop. We can pass in a width, and we can set the width to 350. Let's save this and jump back into our project. And I'm just going to go ahead through and assign each of the prop to its corresponding div from here. So badge is going to have a badge prop, and we could pass in badge in here. And we could pass in badge here. So we'll just do badge. And then we have badge BG. We also have message and muted. And finally, the last thing we have is class name. So let's save all of that. And we're getting an issue here because we don't have a comma. So let's save that. So if it's not highlighted, or if it's sort of the opacity is a little bit faded, that means the prop is not being used. Now, one thing I want to mention is if we go in our app.js and we select, or we have another video thumbnail, but this video thumbnail doesn't necessarily describe a width. And if we save this, what's going to happen is going to mess up because we never defined a width for the second video thumbnail. And so to fix this, there's something called default props in the prop types. So what we could do here is set default props, or just default values to our props, so that if they were never defined, they will fall back to whatever we describe here. Let's do video thumbnail, which is our component, and we can say default props. And inside the default props, we can select the prop video and set this to 350. What this is doing is if the width prop was never defined in our component, the default value for the width will always be 350. So if I save this and preview our project, we can see that both of them are 350, even though the app.js here, we never defined the widths to 350. So if I change this to 300, this first video thumbnail is going to be smaller than the video thumbnail of the second component. Let's save this at preview, and we can see the first component is smaller than the second one. That's because the default value, if we never define a width, is set to 350. This is good for us also because when people start downloading our package and using it, if we don't have a set of default props, it is just going to be blank and they're going to think it's broken. But really it's not. We just don't have any default values set. So what I want to do is I want to set a standard or default values for each one so that when people start using our package, there's sort of this template that they could work with. And I'll get to that in a second. We can leave the width of our 350, but for the other props, I will set default values in a bit. Let's finish our component and style it, and we could top it off with the default props. Back in our app.js, we can get rid of this second one here. Let's go ahead and save this so that we only have one video thumbnail component being rendered. Back in our app.js, let's go ahead and plug in the rest of the prop. So for our message, we're going to have a message prop. Now for our muted, what we could do is we could pass in muted here and just write muted, and this will be true or false, setting the attribute true or false, letting us know that it should or shouldn't be muted. For our class name, inside of our div here, we could do class name, and let's go ahead and select a backticks for our template literal because we're going to be passing in multiple class names here, but let's do class name. So if it has a class name, it's going to be displayed here. Now make sure that the class name is camel case in our div, so don't forget that. Now the last thing we're missing is the badge BG, and for the badge BG, we could pass in style, and we could set the style background to badge BG. Let's save this, and we've got everything plugged in. However, we don't have any styles displayed. If we view our project, we can see that it's there and it's working, but there's no other values being displayed. So what I mean by that is in our app.js, we only have these three props being passed and we never define them in the default props, so they're going to be empty. So let's fix that real quick. For our message, we are going to say our message is just going to be hello, this is a message. For our muted, we're going to say Our mute is going to be true because we don't want any audio to be played. For our class name, we are just going to say we want a custom class name. And the last two that we're going to have is badge. So the badge is going to say live, and the badge BG, which we can just give it a color of, I don't know, what should I give it? Blue? We can just leave it like so. So let's save this, and if we preview what we have, everything is being displayed, but it doesn't look good at all. So we have the message, we have the badge color or the badge background, the title, and the preview. And we can't really tell if it's muted or not, just because it's not playing. But if we go in our index.js and select autoplay, I forgot the camel case, which we need to set. So autoplay, it'll start playing, but it won't have any audio. And to make sure that muted is working, we can set this to false. It will start playing by itself automatically. Okay, so let's just set this to true so that it stops playing. If we set it to false again, it'll play by itself because it's running in the background. Okay, cool. So we've got the structure set up and everything looks good. So we've got the structure set up. Let's go ahead and work in our styles so that we can actually make this thing look good. So in our style.css, we can get rid of this test class. And the first class I have is a video thumbnail class. So it's going to be video thumbnail. And we're just going to set the cursor to pointer here. Then we have a .video class, and this is setting the position to relative. Next we have a video, and we have inside the video, we're making sure we're accessing preview. And with the preview, we're setting the border radius to 16 pixels. Next we have the video, and we have the badge. So we're setting the position to absolute. The bottom will be 16 pixels. The right will also be 16 pixels. Our background color, we're going to set the background color to 613 F75, and then the color is going to be white, so FFF. Border radius, let's go ahead and set that to 2 pixels. And for our padding, let's make that 0 pixels top and bottom and 8 pixels left and right, followed by a height of 16 pixels, a line height of 16 pixels. Let's set the font size to 10 pixels, and we're going to set not the transform, but the transition to 0.4 seconds, ease in, ease out. Next, we can work on our title class. That's a comma, we needed a period, okay. And for our title class, it's going to have a padding of 0, a margin of 16 pixels, top, left and right is going to be 0, and bottom is going to be 8 pixels. The font size that we're working with will be 16 pixels. The font weight is going to be set to 600, and the color of it, we're going to make the color 242431. Wow, I messed that up. 242431. So it's kind of like a little lighter dark black. Dark black? Oh, that doesn't make any sense. It's just a lighter black. So it's kind of a dark gray. That's what I'm going for. Next, we have the views class. And the views class is going to have a font size of 12 pixels. And the color for this one is sort of like a light bluish gray. So it's going to be 7E7E87. Let's go ahead and save this. And inside our index.js, we're going to start applying styles. So for our parent container, which is our further out div, we are going to add another class. And the class for this one is going to access the styles object. And we're specifically going to get the video thumbnail. So it's going to have if we jump back in our style.css, it's going to have this video thumbnail class. So it's going to do styles because it's bringing in styles from style.css and then accessing the video thumbnail. This is the reason why I did camel case rather than adding a dash. So let's go ahead and save that. Now it did bring in the video thumbnail class component rather than the class name from CSS. So just make sure you're using camel case with the first one being lowercase rather than the component itself. Okay, so that one is done. Next, we have the div that's nested inside the video thumbnail class, which is going to represent the video and the badge. And this class name is going to be set to styles.video. And then for our video is going to have a class name set to styles.preview. Our badge is going to also have a class name, and that's set to styles.badge. For our h4, we're going to have a class name, and that's going to be set to styles.title. And for views, we have a class name, and that one is set to styles.views. Now, I probably should have just left it as styles.message, but for us, we are rendering the amount of views or the amount of people that are watching, so we're just going to stick with style.views, but you can really name it anything you want. Now, I also need to assign a width to our parent div and the parent div for the video. So what we could do here is we can do a hard-coded style so that it could access the width, and we can set width to width. And this is the width property, which is automatically set to 350. And we also need to do the same thing for the style.video class. So if we save this and preview our project, everything looks good and it's working here. I'm having an issue with it being on the top left, so let's actually fix that. In our app.js, we can add a class name that will just say center, and this is inside the example, so I'm just adding some classes here. So let's do center here, and actually for our body, we can set a height of 100 viewport height and a width. Let's see if I can bring this down. Width of 100 viewport width. Display. Let's do flex, align items center. Justify content center. Okay, so that's just going to center it for us, and honestly we don't even need the center class. So back in our app.js, we can just get rid of this center class name. Okay, so that's just going to center it for us just so that we could have a better viewing experience. So everything looks good so far with the styles, and everything is working. The last thing that is on our plate is we actually want the functionality to work. So when we hover, it should autoplay, and when we hover off, it should stop. And that is really simple to do. It's extremely simple. We need to first just define a function that will represent the hover. So we could just do on hover, and we could pass in an E for our event, and then just a function. And what we're writing in our function is we need to first get the target of the video. So e.target will get that. Next, we're going to run a play function, which will play our video. To have this actually working, we can pass in an on mouse enter. To have this working, we can pass in an on mouse enter, and inside the on mouse enter, we can run the function. Let's go ahead and get E for our attribute and then run so on hover, we're going to pass in E as the property. Let's save this, and if we preview what we have, it's just playing automatically, and that's because we need to get rid of this autoplay. Let's save that and preview. So it's not playing, and then when we hover, it starts playing the preview. So that's cool, but now we need it to stop. What we could do is we can copy the on hover and just switch it to off hover. And this will represent when we hover off. So for the e.target.play, we can switch to e.target.pause, and this will pause the video. And then in our video, we could just do on mouse leave. And we could do the same. So we're just going to get the target, and then we're going to run the off hover function. And make sure you pass in E for the event so that we can target the video again. We preview again, we hover on it, it's playing, we get off of it, it stops. Hover on, play, on, off, you get the idea. Now one thing I do want to do is when we hover on, we want to fade out this live badge right here. So let's go ahead and get that going. What we can do is on hover, we can do e.target.next element sibling. And we can just do .style, .opacity, and we can set the opacity to 0.4. So just do 0.4. Let's add a space there. And let's see if we hover on now. Okay, we can see that when we hovered on, it faded out. But now we need it to go back to a opacity of 1 when we hover off. We can just copy this e.target next element sibling style opacity and just set it to 1. Let's preview, and when we hover on, it fades out, and when we hover off, it fades back to its opacity of 1. So let me explain this real quick. We are getting the target, which is our video. The next element sibling allows us to access the sibling next to the video. So there's a reason why I put the badge right next to the video sibling inside of the styles.video class name div. so that when I access the next sibling, I am accessing this badge. Next, I'm accessing style, which allows us to access CSS properties in JavaScript, and then just setting the opacity to 0.4 and 1 when we hover on and off. That's allowing us to finish up the entire component. The last thing on our plate is to add the default props, so that if nothing is passed in, let's just give it some values, all right? So for our preview prop, the default value is going to have this URL, and this is just sort of a Penguins movie URL. The title for this one is going to say, hi, this is hi, this is Penguin. Feel free to change the title. And so underneath the title, we can just add message, and our message can say 2M watching now, which means 2 million watching now. For our badge, we can give it a default value of live. Our muted is going to be set to false, and initially we are going to give it a class name, so we can just set the class name default prop to be an empty string. Let's make sure we add the comma to our first one and save this, and nothing's going to happen except when we import a video thumbnail. So our next one, let's go ahead and import a video thumbnail without any props being passed into it. Let's save this, and we can see that another video thumbnail is brought in. And this one, when we hover on, it has the audio playing, it has the title, the 2 million watch, and this is just our default one. It's a pretty cool video, actually. I think it's, oh my god, that's really annoying. Sorry if you're listening on headphones. But yeah, so it's passing in or getting these default values that we have initially listed. But once we change, so if I change the preview here and set it to the same preview that I have up top, it's going to get rid of that penguin one. Okay, so let's save this here and get rid of that. Our width over here sets to 350. If I get rid of the width and save it, it's going to have the same width as our one on the bottom. Okay, cool. So that's completely done with working with our components, and it's working because this right here is a Create React app. To get this published, we can follow documentation that's inside the Create React library. If we scroll down, we can see publishing to NPM. We can run NPM publish, and this will get our package published to NPM. You do need an account, and one thing I need to mention is when you're trying to publish, let me scroll this up here. Let's close this. When you're trying to publish, you need to make sure you add a user. So you could do npm add user, and I am Akram, so I'm going to add Akram user, and it's going to sign in. So it's going to pass in the username, or it's going to ask for the username, the password, the email. I'm not going to do that here, but just know when you run npm publish, it will do that. So it will give you some steps to follow. I'm not necessarily going to do it here because it's really self-explanatory. It's really easy. If you have trouble, I definitely can help you out. And then to deploy to GitHub pages, you don't need to do this. It's just an option to show your project to the world. In my case, I have it at Akram github.io React autoplay, and this is just showing you the example. So once that's published, you have also the option to edit the README, and the README comes like this exactly. So it's coming in with the component, my components. You just need to change this to how you would set up your project in the app.js. So you can copy the video thumbnail here, and inside the README, you can just return the video thumbnail here, and just get rid of the component, and then switch to video thumbnail, or switch this to example, or in our case, it was app. Okay, so that's just kind of pushing it, setting it up. And if you want to install React Autoplay, what you can do is you can head over to the GitHub repo and just install npm install --save React Autoplay, and then just import it and display it. One thing I also want to mention is in the package.json, it has the repo for your GitHub repo, but if this doesn't work or if it doesn't push to your Git repo, you can always just switch this to the default one, which is going to be like repository, and then it's going to say type, and then you're going to say git in here, put double quotations git, and then for URL, you're going to specify the git URL, and to pass it to that git repo, it's very simple. Everyone knows it's just git status. You have all these changes. You have the git add, git push, and then just git commit, and then git push to your repo. That's going to do it for this project. If you did enjoy, please leave a like, leave a thumbs up, And go ahead and check out the React autoplay. I'm going to make more changes so that it has a bit more customization to it. But like I said, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.